Hey, I am trying something new today. So, did you see my new show opening? How cool is that? It took me a couple days to do it. And to be honest, that's really all I wanted to talk about tonight. I really want to be in such a great mood and talk about all the new things that are getting ready to happen and what I've been learning and how I'm starting a new page and how I've got some products coming out. But that's not the case. I am wired for sound. I am loaded for bear. This has been the most crazy week you could imagine. And it all comes from having to confront, deal with people who I don't know how to deal with them. I swear I don't. And I'm trying. I'm really always trying to take the high road, trying to take the peaceful road. I'm trying to do all that stuff that I know I'm supposed to do as a Christian. But I tell you what, it's getting to be really taxing. So I think tonight I'm just, you've seen my show. What I do I am pretty peaceful. I'm not gonna say I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm a fighter, but I do it in a loving way. I've gotten over all these shows that are all about these he said, she said, and right and left and all this arguing, and I really can't I just want to get to the point. So what I try to do is I try to do an interview with obviously somebody that is on our side, because I have not been able to get anybody on the other side to come on the show, even though I've promised to be kind. So I try to do an interview where I am asking questions so that if on the off chance that somebody on the other side, so I'm not preaching to the choir, but somebody who's listening on the other side can hear it and maybe some of it will resonate with them. But I'm getting tired of trying to talk to people who things don't resonate with them. I really get it that if people don't ask for help, don't give it. But there are people who ask for it who still really don't want it. So I've had one of those encounters earlier this week on this kind of crazy text messaging back and forth. And what I decided that I would do, because I was fine about it. I was so upset about this. And I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm trying to do a million things. And then I'm trying to, take one for the team and try to help. But it was really very frustrating. So luckily my new group at church called the War Room started. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of women who get together and we pray for everything from like our church, our community, the nation, so on and so forth, whatever we're led to pray about. And to be honest, after I left there, I felt wonderful. I wasn't carrying this load from any of these texts back and forth, these futile texts back and forth. And then today I had to deal with another nut. So I'm back there again because I thought, you know what, maybe I won't do my rant tonight because I know rant sells. I get that. I'm from television, all right? Conflict sells. That's why the news in the form that we have it now with all that he said, seashell on the seashore crap works because we all get hyped up and we all get angry and we all want to watch it. It works television-wise. I could do that, fine. I could do that. I have that in me. Do I think it's necessary? God, I hope not. And that's first. And secondly, it doesn't do me personally any good. I've decided at this point in my life, having to argue, having to be angry, having to be bitchy, pissy, all that stuff, I won't sleep well at night. I will lose my beauty thing going on here. I'm just kidding, but honestly, I think that all that anger and that angst and all that stuff, it just wears on you, and eventually it will. If it doesn't wear on you on the inside, it does wear on you for the outside. And I ain't got that much time left, so I choose not to go there. However, tonight, I'm gonna ask for your help because I'm not going to read this whole text because you can see how crazy and ridiculous this is. But I'm going to read some of it to you. And what I'm asking of you is if I'm going to pause from time to time and let you chime in and give your opinions, your feedback, your answers, because I clearly couldn't give them. And I will show you the beginning, middle, and end of this text log to show you how I tried. I sincerely tried to take the high road. I sincerely tried to explain things. But with some people, like my mother says, some people you can't help some people. So maybe we can help some people. So I'm giving you the opportunity because I got angry and frustrated and tired of it. So maybe you can too. You can help. No, I don't mean get angry, frustrated, and tired. I mean, you can help me explain this subject, this topic, to a friend of mine. And she's a friend of mine who doesn't take a side. She's a fence sitter. Now, here's what I think about fence sitters. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Fence sitters get on my nerves, all right? They sound like they're taking the moral high ground and going, well, I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that, and both sides have it wrong, and both sides, But in the meantime, you ain't doing nothing but sitting on the fence. And it just reminds me of when I was in grade school and I try to, you go on the swings or the jungle gym, something that's athletic, something that takes some energy and some strength and some practice and some go-getting, and you've got these people who sit at the top of it and they're too afraid to go one way or another. Well, get down or slide, go across the monkey bars or get the heck down. And that's what fence sitters seem like to me. And if you ain't gonna do nothing, get out of the way so the big kids, the brave kids, the ones who are willing to take the risk and fall and bust their butts, let them do something. All right, so that's where I am. That's where my rant is. That's where this text leads me. And again, please chime in. Please help me explain this. And if we can't explain it, then I'm willing to let this go. All right, so her first initial question was about immigration. She asked me what I think of immigration. All right, so as usual, and I've talked about this before with my kids, I'm thinking if somebody asks me a question, they want to know an answer. Okay, but I also know that they ask you enough and they ain't taking the answer that you don't do too much work. All right, you don't do too much work because you're just wasting your time, generally speaking, but you're grateful for the opportunity to have a chance. So, since my last video was on immigration, I suggested that she watch my video, which she watched some of, just some of. And then she said, so this whole thing was about the border. I wanted to hear more about immigration. My answer was, watch the dang video. What is immigration if it's not? What is the border if it's not about immigration? What is immigration if it's not about the border? If you watch the whole thing, then we probably get to some of the stuff that's bugging you, which it did, but which she did not do. All right, she says, it just pissed me off how they feel they have a right to do just what they want, just going to come over here and take our resources and ship them back home. They just decide we are going to America and that's it. But how do you stop it? I'm going to pause for a minute and let you guys give her answers on how do we stop it? How have we been talking about how do we stop it all this time? We've been talking about this for like every. Okay, so now she's come on board. And that's what I really find with people who are middle of the roaders or liberals who see the light is like this. It don't mean nothing to you while we're saying it. We're the meanies. There's something wrong with us. But until it affects you personally, that's when you care about it. And you'll see this later on as we go along. So if you got any answers for her, how do we stop it? How about we help them? But how do you stop it if their country isn't safe? How about we help them make it safe? That will make them stay in their own countries. I don't know. I try to be in the middle and be understanding. Yeah, is the middle really being understanding? Is there really being understanding when kids are being brought over by people who aren't really in their families? When they are being raped, like it said in my video, if you had watched it, that the diapers were being found next to condoms and medication so people would relax. Take that middle of the road and see how frigging understanding that is. I typically don't take this tone, as you know, but I'm tired. I'm just tired. She says, but when a Mexican tells me that I need to order my food in Spanish and she won't talk to me in English, that's where I want to get back. She says, so what can I say? I can say, well, we've been saying this forever. We've been trying to convince you to get on board and help out with this situation. You could say, geez, I wasn't listening. Now, it's a little important to me. Could be a legitimate question, but as we go on, we will see. We make it so easy for them. My niece couldn't get a job at, and she names a country. I won't do that. But her niece couldn't get a job at an American company because she couldn't speak Spanish to get the job. And how the hell can you not get a job in that company if you didn't speak Spanish? This is ridiculous. I understand the border hype and all, but what about the issue of who are already here? Oh, well, that's a new concept. We haven't been talking about who's already here and what to do about it. Those who are taking up the healthcare industry. Don't get me started. I do my yoga breathing at this point, and I say, how about, and we both live in California, how about let's stop voting in California legislators who want no borders and want all these perks for illegals so that we have to pay for them because they want their votes. P.S. You can't worry about what you sound like, voicing your opinion. I go on to tell her that when we do voice our opinions, we're called racist. Not that she hasn't called me a meanie and a racist before, but we're called meanies and racist. I let her know that in the news this week, there were over 1,000 people that came, illegal immigrants, that came through our border. Get the connection? Immigrants, border, came through at one time. That did not, the largest in record. The largest in record. So I let her know, whoa, this problem's even getting worse than you might think it is. I said, how about you write your congressperson? Do something. I said, do something. But doing nothing does nothing. I also suggested that she finish listening to my entire interview about immigration and borders, and she might pick up something to do, because what I do at the end of all of my videos, if you've watched before, if you haven't noticed, is I always ask, what can you do to help? What can the people who are watching do to help? What do you need? So what unnerves me is these liberals and these middle of the roaders, these fence sitters, who once they get on board, their hair is on fire and they're wondering, where is everybody? You know what? And I get that. I stayed out of politics for 8 years or so. I forgot, although the second half of the Obama years and probably, a year of the Trump era. But it wasn't because I wasn't engaged. It wasn't because I wasn't learning about what was going on. I just didn't know if it was futile or not to help. So we all help in our own ways. And that's one thing that I try to bring to the forefront at the end of my video. So watch the dang dong video, okay? So he says, I know, I'm always on the fence about things. Again, she's always on the fence about things. Sometimes I agree with conservatives. I just feel. I'm all about what I feel. You know what? That's what got us into this trouble, is what people feel and what people, instead of what people know is right and common sense and doing the numbers and figuring out just common frigging sense. I don't care about what you feel. She says, oh, I'm so mad. I just lost my place. Christopher, I know you're probably watching, but I'm still doing my rant. I'm going to call you in 1 second. I'm just almost done. So I got to decline you. I'm sorry. I'm just about to finish this. And I hope you guys are logging in and talking to this person because I cannot talk to her. Anyway, I'm going to cut this short because this is pages and pages and pages of her going, I just don't know how I feel. And I don't want to feel mean, but something has to be done. And what are you going to do? And I was in the medical office I took my daughter to the doctor the other day, and there was just so many people using up our services. This just isn't right. I'm like, the dickens you say. So please chime in. Tell her what you think. She says black people aren't going to take this. Well, black people took it. That's why we're here. They moved into our neighborhoods. They're using our resources just as well as anybody else, but more so in the black community. So we took it. Think of Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, all those people, Maxine Waters, all those people saying that we have to side with these illegal immigrants. So don't tell me about black people ain't taking it. All right. Nevertheless, I still try to give her hope. I say that, my goodness, you are sounding just like us. Maybe instead of complaining about it, maybe you should find a way to help and not just complain about it and act like your hair is on fire. So I didn't say that. I was very kind, as I typically am, to people who act like this. Oy vey, and I'm really getting tired of it. So the next morning, I saw a Candace Owens video, and it was perfect. She had gone inside one of these retaining centers, and she saw that it was like Guantanamo on steroids. They had arts and crafts. People were laughing and smiling. They were having a great ping pong, whatever. They were having a great time. But she didn't show the inside, but she also said she was going to do a documentary. So I want to tell you what this woman's response to because I figure, okay, this says it all. I clearly have not been able to say anything. Watch this video because it ain't as long as mine. So watch this video. Maybe it can inspire you to do something instead of acting like your hair is on fire. Her response to that was, why didn't she go inside and show it in Terabang? I thought she was going to go inside. I'm not big on talk. I need to see action. You need to see action? Where's your action? Everybody else been actioning. Both parties, everybody is on some political BS. They both have an agenda. Both parties need to figure out how to get these people back home and shut up. To which I told her that people are doing things. That Candace Owens, I'm sure little does she know, is a media specialist. She said she was going to do a documentary, so I'm sure she's going to roll out the insides how and when she sees fit. And nobody on her advice needs to shut up. She says, I'm sure the facility is nice, but I bet those people inside are hurting and afraid. Well, that's not what Candace showed. And then she went on to say, well, it's probably just like foster homes. Some are good and some are bad, so what are we going to do? Somebody needs to do something to get these people back. They're not with their families, la da 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 da. You know the score. You've heard it. Everyone, she says, everyone is so wrapped up in their agendas and political party that we are missing the big picture. Thank you for the big picture. Somebody who hasn't paid attention, who hasn't watched anything, who hasn't had a part of anything. Thank you. Let us know your big picture idea. We need a solution. Oh, well, why didn't we think of that? She says the agenda should be, how do we get them out? Not to prove how good and bad these detention centers are. Her last sentence, I didn't respond. Her last sentence to me was, that waste of time. I don't know if any of you guys are as bugged by that as I was, and maybe I'm just like, you know what, if I was a younger woman, I would just say that it was, I can't even say it. But I guess I'm just burnt out. I'm burnt out on the fake news, and I'm burnt out, and on a good day, I have to understand that the only thing that this woman hears on a daily basis is fake news, and I see how destructive, and that's why I named this episode, Fake News, Real Demons. And I don't throw the demon word out lightly. But in this case, I felt that it was necessary because what is the enemy? He's here to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what the fake news does. It causes contention with friends. I mean, this woman is a friend of mine, and I'm so mad at her. Probably ain't gonna be my friend after this. But it just causes so much pain and destruction, and it never gets, and confusion. It's the author of confusion. So here's a confusing thing that happened this week, and hopefully Christopher will still be there when I call him back. But there was a news article this week. I mean, obviously it was big news that Trump stopped by a church in, is it West Virginia, Northern Virginia. It was unscheduled, and he popped by, and this pastor laid hands on him, and he prayed over him. It was the day of prayer for the president nationwide, but little did he know, it was going to be up close and personal. So he shows up, and he prays for the president, and I thought it was so cool. And of course, I posted it on my Facebook page, and then immediately someone posts as a response that the pastor apologized for doing it. And we've seen that all too many times. When somebody's nice to Trump, they have to walk that back. They have to do a perp walk and go, my bad, I really. So it's totally feasible that that could have happened. So I posted that as well, and my disappointment in the pastor. A lot of my friends who have shows did the same thing. They did video rants, they posted whatever about their disappointment. It ranged from disappointment, anger, heartbrokenness about this pastor apologizing because a handful of people in his congregation were upset about him praying for the president. Well, then I got a notice from one of my Facebook buddies, who I didn't know, who was such a big shot, actually. You guys probably know him and have heard of him. But he emails me, and he says he goes to that church. Well, how close can you get? And he says that didn't happen. That's not true, that this pastor did not apologize, to which case I immediately took it off my Facebook page, because I know that there's some discrepancy here. I went to a church in Los Angeles like that, and people always lied on this church. It was a very popular church, but they always lied on him and said that things were happening in that church. And I'd been there for years. My kids got saved in that church. I was there for a long time. I never saw any of the stuff that they were talking about. So I know how destructive and how hurtful that sort of information can be. So I wanted you guys to have the opportunity of hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we're going to get him on right now. Let me see here. Thank you for letting me get my rant out. I don't typically do that, but I'm so sick of people right now. I really don't know what to do. Hi, Christopher. I'm so sorry. I was still in the middle of my rant, so I had to decline your call so I could finish it and get to you.
Okay.
So, is there a way you can turn your camera like horizontally, or it's okay if you can't?
Like this, or
that's
horizontal? Okay.
Yeah. If you can't, it's no big. It says poor connection. I hope that's
I can't. I just
okay. It says, oh, there you are. All right, so here we go. Oh gosh, please don't let anything happen to my connection. It's always iffy. Yeah, no, it takes me a minute. They're used to this. It takes me a minute to set up. So I think what I'm gonna do. So are y'all with me? Don't leave. We're gonna have a wonderful guest, and he's gonna tell you about the situation at his church. That's what I wanted to hear about. And, listen, here's the thing is I just always want to be fair, which is something that the media don't do. And I just choose on my show to give people an opportunity to say the right thing. It looks like I'm going to be blocked big time on this, but that's okay. Y'all have seen enough of me. All righty, here we go. All right, so we have Christopher Harris, and like I said, his in is the pastor of this North Virginia church prayed for President Trump on an unscheduled visit And then they said, and this thing was published everywhere, that he apologized for it. Now, then I got this email from Christopher Harris, who is a Facebook buddy of mine, but I had no idea, like I said, what a big shot he is. And he's the executive director of unhyphenatedamerica.org. He's a Christian constitutional conservative. He's been on Tucker Carlson. That's a hard name to say. He needs to change that name. Fox and Friends and the Don Lemon Show. Lord knows how that was for you. But but you have a special affiliation with this church. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Hi, Sonia. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I have a special affiliation with McLean Bible Church because my wife and I have attended McLean Bible Church for nearly a decade now. And so it was interesting because we normally attend the 11 o'clock service. There's only been a handful of times when we happen to attend the 1 o'clock service, but just to give you a little background on the church itself, it is somewhere like the 18th, 19th, 20th. It's one of the top 20 largest churches in America by attendance, where we have roughly 18,000 attendees every week. And why that's significant is that, we are here in the Metro Washington, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. And so we're here in the Metro Washington, D.C. area, and our location on Route 7, if you know anything about the D.C. area, but on Route 7, you have to take Route 7 to go out to President Trump's golf course. Uh-huh. So basically, as I explained to people, I said, when people go, why did he choose McLean Bible Church? Well, because he drives past it every single time he happens to go out to his golf course. You can't miss it. And like I said, we're the 18th largest church in America, and we're, I think, the second largest church in the metropolitan D.C. area. So it's not surprising. And given what I know of President Trump and his relationship with faith leaders, and how he routinely has people come to the White House and he meets with people, and prays and has them pray for him and prays with him. Uh-huh. It's not surprising that when something tragic like the shooting in Virginia Beach took place, that he would feel, compelled to say, I want to have someone pray with me and pray for me. And so, and also, I've done some, in my background, I've done some work for the White House from an IT perspective. And so I was in and out of the White House campus on a regular basis, and I would see his motorcade. And what people have to understand, if you're here in the D.C. area, you probably see it, is that, it's when the president travels, it's not a little deal. His motorcade is 12 to 18 vehicles. And for him to go anywhere, when I say the president, I mean the presidency. I'm not talking about just President Trump. So whenever a president travels, it's a big deal. And everything's scheduled, so he has an advanced team. The Secret Service has to go and check everything out, except if it's an unannounced visit, because if it's an unannounced visit, you don't have to worry about there being some possible assassins there, or there's less likelihood because they weren't planning for it.
That makes sense.
And he can just show up with his contingent of Secret Service agents, and that tends to intimidate the average person. So anyway, I give you all that as a background to understand, why it's not a big deal or nothing significant that he chose to stop in to the church that he chose to stop in, which is my church. Mm-hmm. But the misconception, and Sonia, you're talking about the lamestream media, as I call them, and how they twist things. Even I think the Washington Times or Politico, whichever one broke the story initially, saying that the pastor, of course, our pastor David Platt, who's been a senior pastor now for about a year. We had a previous senior pastor was Lonnie Solomon, who pastored the church for 37 years. He retired last year, and David Platt took over. And David Platt is a world-renowned evangelist and a missionary in his own right. So he was somebody who had the clout to take over a church of our significance. Oh, wow. Okay. But David Platt is a phenomenal biblical teacher. And that's what we do at McLean Bible Church. It is a Bible, there's a reason why we're called McLean Bible Church. It is a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church. My wife and I began to attend the church for the specific reason that when a friend of ours, a business associate, referred us to the church, I looked it up, and the first thing I saw is they said, hey, we're a Bible-believing church. The Bible said it. We believe it, period.
Right, so you clearly stand on, we've got to pray for our government, we've got to pray for our leaders, exactly. And that all people are salvageable, even if you think that some of people aren't. And this story, I'm telling you, it was everywhere. The Washington, these are just a few. The Washington Examiner, Talking Points Memo, GOP USA, Washington Times, Politico, Glock Times. It's everywhere. And the headline was "Pastor Caves to Haters." So you say this is not true. How can you clear this up for us?
So what you have to understand is, once again, when our teachers, our preachers they give exhaustive biblical hermeneutics and biblical exegesis when it comes to anything in the scripture, meaning that it's all about the proper study, the principles of something, and breaking everything down. So when this rare, unique opportunity showed up, of course, our pastor, and I would say he's somewhat of an empath. He wanted to make it clear. He understood that in our church, our size, 18,000 regular attendees from well over 100 different nations represented, that there are people of divergent political beliefs.
Sure.
So obviously, there'll be some people who are what I would call the hashtag triggered by the presence of the president.
Right.
And his role is to be the shepherd. That's what a pastor is, to be the shepherd of the flock. What he did, in keeping with the teaching of the principles of this church, is that he explained to the congregation what 1 Timothy chapter 2 commanded us as Christians to do, which is to pray for our leaders. So that went without doubt. And here's the thing, I said this before. I said I really feel like what needed to happen this coming up week, which was today, that Pastor Platt needed to basically chastise and correct our church. Those people, now, outsiders, who cares what outsiders think? They're not part of our church. But the people within our church, some people needed to be chastised and corrected on them being upset when they're not following the biblical teaching.
Exactly.
So, and he did that. However, what he did today, he also made it clear, which is he clarified the explanation. It was not an apology that he gave on last week. It was an explanation. And he clarified further today the explanation of what he said is that he's aware that some people may have been triggered, if you will.
Right.
And some people are very passionate about their feelings, but at the end of the day, so it came down to the question was, there's no doubt that the president should be prayed for, that we should pray for anyone. The question that some may have had is, do we bring the president? Now, some people might have questioned whether it had to do with this particular president as opposed to any president, because what we hear in the mainstream media, he's constantly being promoted as being this divisive figure, which you and I know, Sonia, that he is no more divisive than any other president, but all day, every day, nonstop. Like my wife and I had this conversation. And my wife is not as actively involved in politics because she doesn't have to be. I do it enough for most people. She's like, well, how is it so many people seem to hate the president? I said, well, really, it's not that so many people seem to hate the president, is that you have a mainstream media that hates the president, and they tell everyone that everyone else hates the president. Because all you have to do is look at the rallies. And you'll see that, Joe Biden can't fill a high school auditorium, and President Trump is filling.
So he ain't that hated. Now, I'm going to read your quote, and I read this with hesitancy because we know all day long that their quotes are even misquoted. So what they said, your pastor says, is sometimes, here we go. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we didn't see coming, and we're faced with a decision in the moment when we didn't have the liberty of deliberation. So we do our best to glorify God. When I read that on its own, it isn't a straight out apology, but I don't know if that's what he really said, because we all know how to listen to and read the media. But is that, and I told you, I was always shocked at what liberals did when I was in Hollywood. And it took me a long time to catch up with what they were doing. And I think that probably happened to your pastor, is that's all happened so quickly, and he didn't really know how to really respond. Now, because I've had years of experience and I know what they're doing now, whenever I'm hit with this, my basic response is bite me. But I'm pretty sure a pastor can't say that.
He can't, and he won't say that. But he did make that clear today in his happy. My wife and I are very happy with the sermon that he gave today because, once again, he explained that we never want to do anything that will cause others to lose faith. But first and foremost, remember, we are Christians, we're a Bible-believing church, and that, we give every month, we're baptizing new people, right?
Right.
And so, and you always point out, it's like, you understand, when you're choosing to be baptized, you're acknowledging that you're a wretched sinner.
Right.
And we've had people come forward and they give a statement about, why they chose to go through our baptismal class and then why they did the public baptizing. And we've heard everything underneath the sun, that they were drug addicts, they were prostitutes, they were whatever, atheists, and everybody has their explanation as to what was going on in their life. And the question is like, so what makes you think that you are worthy of forgiveness and salvation, but President Trump is not?
Oh,
and
good.
People are doing it based off of his past. And people who voted for President Trump, they did that full well knowing who he was.
Mm-hmm.
There was no question about who he was. But, who has he been since he's been president? Now, you don't have to like his style, because I think a lot of people are caught up in his style.
And his tweets. Oh, my God, he tweets.
Well, see, and there's a whole other thing behind that. It's like you realize that things that he says are completely taken out of context. I mean, look at here. We have a pastor, right? A man of God, a confirmed, convicted man of God. And even the mainstream media took what he said and added to, subtracted, twisted, and reframed it to fit their narrative.
Right. And
so
wow, that's good.
David Trump.
That's good, because that was my next question is, why do you think they do this? We really sort of know the answer why they do this, but I think that they're kind of godless, soulless people, and they want to take God and Trump down as well, and they were able to do it with this story in one fell swoop. I've got to get on to my next guest, but I want to ask you this before you go. Tell me what Unhyphenated America is all about, and how can they reach you and help and all that stuff.
They can check out, I'm most active on Facebook, so you can check out the Unhyphenated America Facebook page. We're starting to get back into doing more articles to publish on the website, which is unhyphenatedamerica.org.
Good.
But what is it? Unhyphenated America is quite simply an organization that we believe that America's best when it's unhyphenated, meaning if you understand, if you believe, if you embrace the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then you're an American. And if there's no need for any prefix or suffix, you're just American. Hence, I don't acknowledge, I don't refer to myself as an African American. My family's been here for 200 plus years.
Right.
And so why would I call myself an African American when my culture is American? My culture is more American than many people. I don't say this in a disparate way, but there's people whose family's been here for 50 or 60 years and they just call themselves Americans, but my family's been here 200 plus years, and people want me to refer to myself as an African American when these other people don't call themselves Greek American or Italian American.
Right. I'm an American who happens to be black. So you unhyphenated means we just strip ourselves of that. Let's be Americans. I mean, for me, I'm an American who happens to be black, and I can cherish both things at one time. But I don't have to be set apart.
I'm a Christian who happens to be black. I mean, I'm not
exactly.
I'm not attend a black Christian church. I'm a Christian Christian church.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother topic that you just sparked something. It's a whole other topic I'd love to talk to you about. But thank you so much for coming out and clearing this up, because I've seen some really well-meaning people who do shows much bigger than mine, and they were all over your pastor, and I just felt really blessed to get that message from you saying, not so true. So I just wanted to allow you to have that voice as well.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on, Sonny, and hope to be back on.
I will definitely have you on, and I hope to be as big as you guys are someday. All right. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Care. You too. Bye-bye.
God bless.
God bless you too. Okay. All right. So, I know my rant took super duper long. Sorry. Oops. I gotta get rid of him. So my rant went long, so I had to cut him a little bit short, but because I want to have time for my next guy. And so we get that the whole topic is fake news, real. Oops. Let me take this off. Hold on. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be. Y'all do realize I'm doing this all myself. So anyway, boy, it's not just fake news. It's fake institutions of education. It's fake, if they could even be called that anymore, institutions of education. They're doing anything but education. And there's fake Hollywood, and that's what my book is about. It's down there, leftit.net. You can go to that website and find out all about it. But it's the subtitle is Miracles, My Journey in Hollywood, or My Adventures in Hollywood and Why I Left the Left. And towards the end of my career, I was working on kids shows. And there were Disney, there were Peter Ringle stuff. There was all kinds of stuff. ABC Family. And I could tell that there was a certain agenda. There was a certain sea change. There was a wave that was getting ready to happen. It became very difficult to pitch shows with two parents in the household and different things like that. And I remember when I was working on a show. I was the consultant, and then I moved on to producer of a show called That's So Raven for Disney. And even though that character, and I come on many shows where I've never seen them before. Because I'm not a big TV watcher. I can just write them for some reason. But so I'm getting ready to go on this show called That's So Raven, and I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, this girl is crazy. And then I get on the show and she's got a lot of really bad habits. They're not habits that I would teach my children. The cool thing about that show is that she had consequences for her bad behavior. She was self-centered. She would steal your boyfriend. She would do whatever it takes to come out on top, but then she would always not come out on top. And in the beginning of that show, she had two parents, and there were some contractual things, I believe. I don't know. Don't hold me to this because I don't want to be sued. But she wound up with one parent, even though the kids who watched the show said, boy, we really miss the other parent. We really want the other parent. But by then, the whole agenda started to turn into, the agenda of the left. They were very serious about it. And I would run into people who would say, God, you know what? We have kids and we love the Disney Channel because we can turn it on and leave the room and go do something else and we know our kids are safe. Wait. This week I saw an article, and it could be an old article, but I saw it this week. And Disney is having their first, and this is the headline. Disney sends beautiful message with first boy princess, complete with chest hair. Okay, I don't know that any princess had any sort of post-pubescent hair, but okay. This one has chest hair. So here are the bullet points. In a recent episode, this character, Marco Diaz, transforms himself into Princess Marco. Before he's able to confess that he's a boy and that he's pretending to be a princess, the evil headmistress. That's another thing that I'm seeing, and that's another thing when I was working last I started to see is the females always started to turn into these evil characters. And maybe that comes from witch stuff. That's big with Disney, but okay. So the evil headmistress. Her name is Miss Heinous. In case you were wondering if she was good or bad, her name is Miss Heinous. She outs him as a boy and exposes his chest hair. Well, that's good that it's on his chest, and she didn't have to expose any other sort of hair on this kid's body. However, the other princesses insist. Well, that's nice of the girls. Here's a good positive female characters. They insist that boys can still be princesses. So that's your modern day Disney. PBS, we all know them. We all know that they're progressive and all that, but we all know Sesame Street and Electric Company, maybe a couple of others that I can't remember right now. But at least if your kid was watching that during the time my kids were, it wasn't so progressive. And at least they were learning how to read something. So, it wasn't so Miss Heinous, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring on my next guest who I saw just recently, and we have a ton of stuff in common, including our love and oh God, I hate to call it a love, but a real understanding for Hollywood and how it works and what their agenda is and how it's destroying our culture, our boys, our families, so on and so forth. He happens to come from my neck of the hood, I call it. He's from my neighborhood, and in fact, we probably have run into each other when we were younger. I'm going to call him while I play this clip of the new the PBS show. I'll give you a heads up. It's a show for kids. It's animated, and their school teacher decides not to marry the woman that he's having a relationship with and marry his true love, who is a man. And you watch the messages, watch how joyous, watch exactly the tone of this video. So I put it together because I love to edit. You guys have probably seen that in my spoof. So I put this together into a bit that before I bring my next guest on, and here we go.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
My father's gay.
Look, the children's series Arthur had its 22nd season premiere yesterday, and viewers got a surprise. The kids found out that their teacher, Mr. Ratburn, was getting married, but they didn't know who he was marrying.
Yeah, after they spotted him with a woman named Patty, who wasn't very nice, they vowed to stop the wedding. Then they found out his real partner.
You know that children's cartoon Arthur? Yeah, they had a gay wedding.
Who is Mr. Ratburn marrying? Mr. Ratburn is married. I still can't believe this. Yep, it's a brand new world.
No, it just opens the door for conversation,
Right.
I think.
I don't know, the more we talked about it, the more we saw it as an opportunity for a learning experience.
The reality is, kids in this generation, they already see everything as all of this as normal.
Yeah, no,
It's
that's the
not.
thing. It's the parents putting their beliefs onto the kids.
Absolutely.
Great way to represent another part of life that so seldom gets portrayed on television.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. Mr. Smithers.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
You like Jonah?
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Hello, everybody!
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Okay, here we go. So I'm bringing my next guest in. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really like editing. So that's who I am. Let's see, video. Video, FaceTime. Flip. All right, so we're going to bring our next guest on. And let me tell you about him. You guys probably, hi, I'm so sorry I'm running behind, but I got you now. Alrighty. So I'm going to do your intro. He's a pastor. He's a veteran, and I'll get this ready while I'm talking about you. So I'm not talking about you behind your back. Okay. Let's see, graphics 2, and we're over there. Oh, good. I think they can see you. All right. So Lonnie Poindexter is his name. You guys probably already know him from the Urban Talk Radio. He's a veteran radio host there, and he hosts something called Lion Chasers. It takes an in-depth look at the effects of liberal ideology on the African American community. Gosh, I just got turned on to him. I told you guys I'm on the late freight. I stopped doing anything political, and so I heard him just last week, and I heard his show, and he was talking about Hollywood, which is clearly, like I said, it's all about me. On lefted.com, my book is about my experiences in Hollywood. And then, like I said, we came up in the same neck of the hood, and we also share some very close friendship, a very close friendship. But boy, I just had to have him on and talk about these influences that the media is having on our society, on our communities, our children. I mean, it's out of hand right now. So welcome, Lonnie. Hi.
Well, thank you, Sonia. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your program. I look very much forward to it.
Well, I thank you guys for coming on. I'm just a startup, but I really appreciate you guys coming on. So I want to first start off with your saying the effects of liberal ideology that may be unique to the Black community. What are some of those things, and why aren't we more angry about it?
Sure. Let me first clarify for you. I'm not actually a pastor.
Oh.
That's predominantly who I hang out with. Probably 90-some-odd% of who I hang out with are clergy, but I'm not an ordained minister myself.
Oh.
What I am is the chief edifier for the pastoral community, because I feel that, and I have a passion for this, for edifying the pastoral community, because I believe it's the most important position on this rock that we call the earth that we live on, is the pastors, and because they're the ones that disseminated truth from on high that we get from our Heavenly Father. They are the field generals that in this epic battle that we're in, and they receive their orders from on high, and then they help marshal the troops, and we, the congregation, or the constituents, if you will, are the troops that are marshaled to go out and fight this fight.
Wow. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Wow, you come off as a pastor. I hang out with a bunch of jerks, and it doesn't mean that I'm a jerk either. So what's this liberal? I mean, I talk about it all the time, but I love people to hear it from a different mouth. What's this liberal ideology, and how does it affect the Black community?
Well, when you and I have had this conversation prior, and those who have our worldview know this. Our community has been sitting at the trough and drinking from liberal ideology for 50 plus years. If you look back at our history, those of us with the darker paint job, I like to call Black Americans, that we have always historically been conservative if we never called ourselves that. If I look at my parents, and I was raised in Southern California like yourselves, I would call them Kennedy-era Democrats. My worldview comes from how I was raised. The only thing that I did is I connected with my worldview, which is biblical, with my political worldview. I found there was a disconnect with who I was aligned with in terms of my political worldview, and I had to make an adjustment.
That's interesting. So you and I came from virtually the same neighborhood, and during approximately the same time. And I'm going to tell you what I saw happen. I saw kids who came from really moderate middle income families who were doing quite well.
Yes.
2-parent households.
Yes.
They went to church. The lawns were manicured. And then the liberal ideology hit. And all of a sudden, I'm telling there are kids there's 2 divides in my neighborhood where I grew up. One is there was a kid who studied the violin. He plays with the LA Philharmonic. There was a ballerina dancer, Patrice Rushen, who just played at the Playboy Jazz Festival. She's a composer and a musician. She came from my neighborhood. Then, so did Tiger Bear and Huggy Bear, all these other bears that came out of when liberalism came in and told these kids that they had a right to be angry and that they should be gangbangers. And then their future became, there's one guy who's been in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. There's others who died. Yet there's others who were incarcerated who bought into this ideology.
That's exactly what I saw in the neighborhood as well. I grew up in a neighborhood where you could count on one hand in the entire neighborhood how many households that were single parent in the entire neighborhood.
Yes. Yes.
They were all homeowners, and some folks it was a solid middle class, upper middle class community, and folks found a way, in spite of the obstacles because of second class citizenship, to seek the American dream, and they attained the American dream. I grew up right around the corner from the Beach Boys. So it was a Leave It to Beaver type childhood from a black perspective.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Now,
then that changed.
And then and I saw the change. That's I guess, and that's one of the things I write about in my book. I kind of go back to figure out, well, how did this happen? How did I? But I think that some of the things that I saw, some of these kids, we had Japanese gardeners, and all we got a right to be angry. So, but even now, people are catching on and they're verbalizing it. And you told me a story today when we did our test run about your sister. Can you share that? I find that wonderful.
Sure. My siblings, one of my siblings approached me when I was home for the holidays and said to me, and we were just she and I in the car, and she says, I don't have a problem with Donald Trump. And I said, excuse me, what did you just say? I said, I don't have a problem with Donald Trump.
Time stops.
And so I said, wait a minute, hold on here. I said, I need to record this. She says, I'll deny it if you say I said it. She says, but I don't have a problem with Donald Trump. I'm sick of these high taxes and these regulations and so forth. I'm not wealthy. My husband and I, all we do is pay taxes. We've got 2 children in college. And it takes all we have to make our bills per month, and she didn't see a future going forward in terms of being able to save money and those types of things, because money was continually going out for things that she didn't see any value in terms of services, and she lives in the state of California. So I laughed and I said, it's issues. When you get down to the issues, you find that folks begin to wake up with what's really going on. So she said she's pulling the lever for Donald Trump in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, I just smile. So it tells me that there's something taking place. I wanted to back up a little bit and comment, because you had asked me what happened, what's going on. What took place is approximately 55, let me just back up and say, when the implementation of the entitlement programs, which took place right around the same time the civil rights legislation was signed in the mid-1960s, which would have been 1964, 65, is when you began to see the shift in our communities with the fallout from the entitlement programs, which would be welfare, WIC, and all these other Section 8 and everything else. You began to see the decline in our families, in the communities. In that same neighborhood where I grew up, I remember a family that when we first moved there was 4 children, and before my parents sold the home and moved from there, that family had split up and gotten divorced. And that was the first family that I remember on the street that got divorced. Today, it's commonplace throughout those same neighborhoods. And these homes today are $750,000 up to $1 million homes.
Exactly,
and
right.
The homes are broken. There's bars on the windows. And the community is completely changed from what we saw coming up as a 70s child. And I'm a 70s child.
It's so true, because there was one divorced family in my neighborhood when I grew up, and there was a stigma. That was those kids are still messed up behind that.
Yes.
Their families and then flip to, or cut to, as we say in TV world, when I have my kids and my kids walk in a home of their friends, and there's a guy in the house, and they go, "Who's that?" They're just assuming that it's the mom's boyfriend, and she says, "That's our dad." And he goes, "What's he doing?" And my kids go, "What's he doing here?" And that's listen, I'm a part of that era too. But it just shows you the difference in time and how fast, who has had more effect on our society than liberals or the left or whatever you want to call them. That's an ever-changing thing right now. So
very true. Very true. Prior to the implementation of the entitlement programs, the black household as a rule across American urban communities across America, 70+% of black households were 2-parent, typically male head of household.
Exactly.
You flip-flop that completely today, that number's about 72%, 73%, depending on what study that you look at. Single-parent household, typically female head of household in Southeast Washington, D.C., which is Anacostia, right across the river from the White House. That number is nearly 90%.
Oh, I can believe it.
Black households.
I can believe it. We used to travel, and I'm getting way off topic here, but we used to, my parents worked for the school board. We had 3 months off. This is all in my book. We had 3 months off during the summer, and somehow they planned vacations for us throughout the United States. And the worst poverty that I think I have seen is in Washington, and so close to the nation's capital, so close to such beauty and eloquence and all of this, and then you turn the corner and then there's such poverty and such, it's just so destitute. I'm not surprised that it's 90%. But let's get to a happier topic, will you? Which isn't really all that happy. Your knowledge and your connection with Hollywood really struck me when I heard your broadcast the other day. And you talked about something that is in my book, and I haven't heard anybody talk about, is blaxploitation movies. First of all, you might want to explain to the audience what blaxploitation movies are and what sort of effect do you think that it had. That's during the 70s, I believe. Like I'm acting like I'm all young. I think it was the 70s. What do you think that the effect was on our community?
Yeah, well, they rolled out in the 70s, starting in the early 70s, really came into vogue in the later 70s, and they were titled blaxploitation movies. They were, because black actors had such a difficult time getting traditional roles within Hollywood. And isn't it really interesting? Hollywood, which is run by white liberals, the only roles that blacks could get, even prior to blaxploitation, were roles like butlers and nannies and housekeepers and things like that. Right. And so blaxploitation came along, where blacks became the centerpiece of the star of the movies, but it depicted the seedier parts of black life. And I think it was the 1-2 punch when you had the implementation of the entitlement programs. And I was a big fan of those movies because, I wore the hair, I had the big afro, and the big hats, platform shoes, just like everybody else. But isn't it interesting that the roles and so forth that came forth were those roles that depicted us in a less than favorable light? Well,
we were pimps and we were gangsters and we were, but I think the thing that they thought they were empowering us, well, I hate that, empowering us with, is we had power and control. We were the kingpins. We were suddenly and I'm talking about males, because really, if you wanted to look at the war on women, when you look at the women's roles in those movies, we were the hoes and we were for the taking of these men who were in power, and they were in power because they were doing illicit drug deals and so on and so forth. But they had a profound effect on the black community, I think, during that time, who had never seen themselves in any role of power.
No, it certainly did. And just think of today, the term pimping is deemed as a positive term today.
Oh my gosh, it's true. He's a big old pimp.
So, in other words, as a black male, the only way you could succeed was either as a pimp or a hustler or a professional athlete, or today as a rapper.
A rapper. Oh,
isn't that really interesting?
God. Oh my gosh.
Yet the neighborhood that you and I grew up in, you had, oh my goodness, pharmacists, physicians. You had those who worked in school administration as principals, teachers, educators. Yes. And then in the case of my next door neighbor, who broke the color line, he and his wife, in the neighborhood where we grew up in Southern California, he was a garbage man, but he was a very wise man. He owned property all over.
Right, exactly. Those are the role models that we saw. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, where are all the children? Right. So we talked about gangbangers, music videos. I think after the 70s, we moved into the gangbanger movies, and a friend of mine just passed away, John Singleton, and Boys in the Hood fame, and then there came those movies where we were depicting our life in the ghetto, but it was our life in the ghetto because of what liberalism had done to the ghetto, I believe. And then there came music videos who depicted the big time, like you said, the big old pimps, and the women, their big claim to fame is if you can be draped around one of these guys. Hopefully one of them would take you on. So, and what I have to say is, we're talking about black images and black characters right now, but I don't think that it was any easier for white Americans, because oftentimes I looked at their music videos and where they were going, and I saw all these satanic acid rock, hard rock stuff, and I thought, wow, we're getting attacked by culture and morals, and they're getting attacked by demonic forces and satanic forces, and a lot of these kids committed suicide behind some of this, this acid rock. So I'm really not trying to make the media and Hollywood and images into a black or white thing, but I loved hearing you talk about it the other day, so I wanted to bring that into the
well, here's the thing that I saw, Sonia, on that topic. The same things, and my friend Star Parker covers this in one of her books called White Ghetto, where she talks about the same pathologies that existed or exist within urban American black communities are taking place in suburbia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the difference. It's just that the black community is the canary in the mine shaft. When you think about liberal ideology and how they want to roll this thing out, they look to use the black community as the pawns to test market this thing. Because think about this. Slavery, nor Jim Crow, nor the KKK, none of those heinous things broke the black community.
Right.
In fact, we rebounded after slavery during Reconstruction.
Oh my goodness,
tremendous gains. Went from being primarily illiterate right after emancipation, that within half a lifetime, the black community went to being almost completely literate. So we overcame. The problem was they implemented those entitlement programs, and then that's what hamstringed us to where we're on life support today. And I had a prominent, and he is a sociologist here in Washington, D.C., Dr. Patrick Fagan from Heritage Foundation, who said this. He says, if those things could not break the black community, what's the one thing that could? He said it was the entitlement programs. He said, so goes the black community, so goes America.
The nation, that's right. And that's what people don't understand about socialism.
This gentleman that said this is white Irish Catholic, so he's prophetic, just like Daniel Patrick Moynihan was with the Moynihan Report back in the late 60s.
Wow. That is so interesting. Okay. How do we... All right, so we've talked about how it's cross-cultural and that it's, what do you call it? It's purposeful. It really is. Okay, so I was talking to somebody about this yesterday because I'm co-parenting my grandson, and he's like, and he doesn't have kids, and he's like, we just have to talk to your kids. You have to just talk to... How do you talk to your kids against this onslaught of craziness that's coming out? Now, my grandson the other day, and I just thought of this as I'm talking to you, he goes, what are taxes? And so, of course, I give him the whole lowdown on taxes and why California taxes are ridiculous and why they overspend and why they take our money and they spend it on... This is more than a 6-year-old was really asking.
Yes.
But I had to go there. But how do we talk to our kids? I had Joe Messina on a couple of episodes ago, and he says that we're with our kids a few hours of the day. Even if you opt your kids out of the sex ed thing and other things that are happening to them at school, their circle of influence is still with the kids who have gone, or with their teachers who have that agenda, or their school who has that agenda. How do we manage this?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time on my show and also throughout our network, Urban Family Talk, and our greater network, which is American Family Association, American Family Radio. Christian folk need to seriously consider pulling their children out of public school systems, because just like you said, your friend stated, they're indoctrinated, 20 from the time they arrive on campus until the time they leave from 8:30 or 8 a.m. in the morning till about 3 o'clock every day. So whatever you're instilling in them on in the evenings and on Sunday and maybe Wednesday night Bible study, they're getting a whole lot more, when they are involved in institutions whose chief charge is to indoctrinate them. So what we say on our network is, this is where the church needs to step in. We need to have church-based schools. We need to have school vouchers so parents have options and so forth with their finances to be able to put those children in those schools, because as you've seen, they're stepping things up. I mean, what you see what's going on with Disney and Netflix and all these other entities, it's only going to get worse.
Oh my gosh. Here's another question I have for you about how to talk to the parents of I'm a grandparent, and my daughter busted my grandson praying for Trump, because we do the whole gamut. We pray for everybody in the family, then we pray for the soldiers and the first responders, the policemen, all the stuff, and then we go. And then he said Donald Trump, and I did not put this on my grandson. He liked Donald Trump because Donald Trump's an architect, and my grandson builds things. He will take. I don't care what you give this child, he will make something of it. So when he found out that Donald Trump was an architect, that's his boy. So, but we pray for him, and then my daughter found out. And we went rounds, and what we landed on some sort of common ground, is that he says the president now instead of Donald Trump. But how do we surpass our children when they want to raise, and it is their right to raise their children the way they want to, but is there some advice that you could give grandparents on how to surpass their children and teaching their kids the right way to go? And my daughter's also afraid of, like, with this whole gay agenda thing, and since she's a single parent, she's afraid to go, you're a boy, because she's afraid that, she's getting advice from her gay friends that are telling her, well, if you say that, then it's going to make him, it's like the whole drug thing when we were young. They say, if you tell your kids not to have drugs, then they're going to do it. Instead of somebody being that voice of going, this ain't good for you.
Yeah, I think that parents just have to remind their children who have children of what Scripture says, because if you raise your children in the church, even if they get to a point where they're a little rebellious as adults and looking to go their own way, that word is still in them, and the Bible says that the word does not return void. When we remind them of Scripture, I think what happens is that something resonates, and then we have to let the Holy Spirit do the work, and then continue to lift them up in prayer.
The intercessor. Yeah, we got to stand in the gap.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, all right. Definitely. That's a good reminder. Okay. Hundreds of people who just are ready to. All right. So I don't know if you heard my rant about middle of the roaders and people who just.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. I don't typically go there, but I did tonight.
Do you feel better now? You had to get
I do. I feel much better now. So what, how do we deal with these people?
With the national radio show, I have the naysayers all the time. Often many of them I grew up with from the old neighborhood, you know what I mean? What I've come to learn, so it keeps me from getting frustrated, is our job as those who know the truth is to plant seeds. Because it really, as Christians, that's our job is. We're not going to convert anybody. It's the Holy Spirit's job to do that. But our job is to plant seeds. And in due season, the harvest comes, and the harvest responsibility belongs to the Holy Spirit. So I plant seeds, and it's amazing to see folks you talked to several years ago who now get private messages just say that, well, Lonnie, I'm not saying that I agree with everything you're saying, but I do understand where you're coming from now. So progress can be made, and we're going to win this battle. So we just need to keep speaking truth.
We know the end of the story, and you're so right. And I have often called myself the seed layer. And I've had people come back into my life years later and go, when you said such and such, and I go, and you are, I don't even remember who they are, let alone what I said. So, okay, all right, that really helps me. And I hope, I probably lost a friend by going completely off tonight, but I was just like, I'm so tired. I'm just like, it's like, do you really want help, or do you just want to, I don't know. I don't get people. I don't get it. But
the fence sitters, they sit the fence because they haven't done their homework. I get it all the time. I said, you got to pick a side. At some point, you're going to have to choose and pick a side. And I get this all the time. Well, it's all corrupt. They're all in cahoots together, Lonnie. It's all going to hell in a basket, in a handbasket. I'm just waiting with my bags packed at the train station for Jesus to come.
Oh my gosh, that could take forever. In the meantime, we could use a little help here.
You could use a whole lot of help.
All right, so I want you to come on again because because there's so many other things, and I always say this is the longest show this is really truly the longest show I've ever done. So maybe I'm getting ready to be able to do long shows. I don't know. I'm evolving. But thank you for coming on, and I will have you on again because there's so many other things I want to talk about with you.
Well, I really appreciate it. Just share with your listeners out there. They can catch me Monday through Friday at urbanfamilytalk.com. The name of the show is Lion Chasers with Lonnie Poindexter.
And it's really good. The whole network is really, really good. Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you soon.
All right. God bless.
God bless you, too. All right, people. I know I've kept you past your bedtime. I always say that, so let me wrap this up really quickly. All right, so, gosh, what was I going to say? So I hope you guys really did enjoy my opening. I worked so hard on it. And send me an email and say if you liked it, if you even remember it at this point, but I'm going to do it again. I'll do it every show because that's what I did it for. I'm going to have a closing as well, and I'm also going to invite you guys to be a part of the credits. You can be co-producers, and you could be contributors and all that stuff, and I'll send out emails to let you know. Emails? I will send you out direct messages and stuff on Facebook on how to do that and get your name on the show, because some of you are being extremely helpful in sharing the show, posting the show, giving watch parties. That's how you get on the credits for the show, for the closing credits. So there's that. What else? Oh, another exciting thing other than my opening, my closing, and I'm going to have merchandising. So I've already picked out some cups. There are no spectator cups because remember, again, my slogan is American. Being an American anymore is no longer a spectator sport. I just see all these bags. I have new allergy medicine, so hopefully all these bags and red eyes and all that stuff. It's gotten so much better. But so I got merchandising, and I think that's it. So until next week. Remember, being an American is no longer a spectator sport. Join me next week, and I'll have some other exciting guests for you. And I promise I won't go this long next time. All right. I think that is it.